Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty and today we're going to talk about using our scraps for scrapbooking. So I always have a pile of scraps left over when I finish off a kit, and today I'm going to focus on that jar print and the moth print along with some cardstock to scrapbook these photos about my daughter reading out on our porch swing at night. Now the photos aren't that great and I'm okay with that. I do a lot of very candid photos of my family and our adventures, and I'm okay with imperfect photos. So in order to make these imperfect photos have more of an impact, I am going to graduate them in size so that the bigger photo has more of the focus here. And then I'm going to turn to using my scraps to mat these photos. And I'm not going to be too picky about what I've got to hand. So I'm going to pick things that I feel like could work and just run with it. The first paper I choose is that star print to mat my photos. Since this is a nighttime page, I thought that star print would work just fine. And then one of the tips I have for using up your scraps is to fussy cut elements out of them to create your own embellishments. And that is a great way to use up scraps. Another way is to punch shapes out of them. Now I'm going to cut that square down into corners and actually use that as photo corners, but you could certainly punch any shapes you want out of your leftover pattern papers. I did head to my stash and pull out some embellishments to go with this because my scraps of pattern paper don't tend to have embellishments already in there, and while I can make some of my own, I do like to add in extra texture. Now, I did say I'm not trying to be too fussy about using pattern papers for my mats. However, that green was not making me happy. So I did go back through the same pile of scraps to see if I had something that would feel a bit better. And so I found something that had more of the colors that I wanted in there, and that worked better, so I was okay with changing it. If I hadn't have found anything, I probably would have just left the green and moved on. There is no one right or perfect way to scrapbook any of your projects, so I'm getting a lot better with using things that I feel are working okay and moving on. So another way to use up your scraps is to create borders with long enough pieces. One tip here, if you don't have long borders, if you've got a pattern paper with repeating prints or a very subtle print, you can cut smaller strips and piece them together into a longer border. So keep that in mind when you're doing borders. And then I do go ahead and move on to embellishing, and these are pretty simple embellishments. I'm adding some silver twine to my jars up there at the top, and I'm going to create those jars to mimic the lights in my photos, and we'll get to the rest of that in a minute. I am going to use my alphabet set that I am creating myself these days, and if you want more information on how and why I made those little organizer boxes or how and why I'm doing my own alphabets these days, I will link you up. There's like 3 videos covering those various topics, so I will link you up to that. So I got my title going with my homemade alphabets, and then I'm going to spice up this page with some pre-made embellishments. So on top of the word bedtime, I'm going to use those words, which include some blue shiny metallic, which adds a nice texture to this page, to add the word story right on top of bedtime. And sometimes I really like to stack my titles to get a different look and feel. Here's a tip when working with fussy little letters or such. I will often line them up how I want them to be, and then I will grab them, and there I'm fussing a little bit more to get them perfect. I will grab them with a piece of washi tape, and then if they have any backing on them, I'll go ahead and remove that backing. And then because washi tape is slightly see-through, you can mostly see to get your letters back in place. And I do a little bit of adjustment if for some reason they are off a little bit, which could still happen even with this tip. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to finishing up my lights up there. So I found some yellow pattern paper from that pile of scraps that I'm working with, and I'm just going to punch little circles out of them to create a lantern look to those jars. And then I'm going to add my moths around the jars, and that's going to complete my upper embellishment bit. And then along these borders that I made, I'm going to add a lot more words that have to do with imagination and storytelling and, going on adventures through your imagination and stuff like that. So up at the top, I am balancing that shiny blue title with more of the shiny blue words at the top. I want to be sure not to put those at the bottom because that will compete visually with my title, and I want to make sure that the title is the part you see first down there. I'm going to take a little pause right here to say that if you are using this washi tape trick, go ahead and fold over the ends of your washi tape so you give yourself a little handle that won't stick to you. All right, moving on. I did use that washi tape trick on most of my words, but up here at the top, I had that twine in the way. So I just lined up I cut apart all my words with their backer sheet in place, and I line up that backer sheet where I want the words to go, and then just move one letter up at a time in order to get them in place. And then we can go ahead and move on to another way to use your scrap pieces of paper for your scrapbooking, and that is to create yourself some journaling blocks. Now this piece of paper has a diagonal flow to it, and I actually want it to be horizontal across my page. So I am cutting this down carefully so that I can get those stripes to be horizontal. And I'm going to create several little journaling blocks that are going to flow across my page in different areas because I did have some open gaps left in my page that I can add those into. And I'm going to go ahead and round the corners, and I'm going to let the edge of the paper on the other side hang off the paper. And I just like the flow of how that works with the journaling block. And then I decided I wanted to fill in another space down by my title with a last little bit of journaling that's actually going to have words that flow and read into the title itself. So I did add that down there, and then I have some space to the right of the title that I'm feeling like needs a little bit of something. And I start adding in some other shapes here, and I decide that is just too much. I've got jars, I've got rounded rectangles, and adding in triangles was just going to be too much. So I did go ahead and cut out one more of those moths to kind of carry that theme down to the bottom of the page, and just simply added that to that space. And I am going to call that good and done. I hope you picked up some tips on how to use your scraps for scrapbooking. If you have fun ways that you like to use your scraps, leave a comment below so that we can all learn together. And don't forget, if you're interested in learning about my new alphabet system and my little storage boxes, I will have 3 links down in the show notes for you on that topic. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.